Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. This is another episode of the Grumpy Dad Sports Show, talk channel, whatever you want to call it. So the conversation that I hear a lot, and I know every single person that's ever been part of a sports conversation has probably got an opinion on this and has probably heard it talked more than they've even heard any other conversation before. And this has been recently surfacing since the last, 10 years, something like that. And it is, who is the best player in NBA history? There are a few names that circulate outside of the big two. And I'm going to leave those guys out of it. Even though, I am not going to say that there is any world where any of the other guys are not in this conversation, but just for the sake of this video today, we're going to leave them out of it. But with all respect to Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, a few others intermixed in that, Kobe Bryant, my respect to all of you players. I love every single one of you as a young athlete growing up who played sports. You guys were a big part of whom I watched and paid attention to, because the big two that you hear about is, LeBron James and Michael Jordan. Who is the better of those two? That seems to be the big question. Who is better? And it's a really interesting question when you talk about it, because they are two totally different style of players. And then it's kind of weird when you think about it, because LeBron kind of had an era where he was almost like Jordan. He did have that part of his game where he scored 30, 40, 45 points a game every single game. And then it's almost like he went to the Olympics, came back, and he decided to play like Magic Johnson. So there's almost like a two-part story to his career. And with it being as long as it has been, you can't take that out of consideration when you're talking about the GOAT, because his career is so much longer, and his prime has been so long. And then, on the other side, there's Michael Jordan, whom is probably the most feared basketball player of all time, probably the most athletic, has the best body control, the most dominant player on both sides of the court, because he was a dual player. He was a defensive specialist, and he was a obvious offensive specialist, dunker in particular. And my opinion is that Michael Jordan is the best. But anybody that says LeBron is the best, I do not. I will argue, because I love arguing. It's just who I am. I love doing it. But if you say that LeBron is the best, I do not think that you are, quote unquote, stupid for your opinion. Because, there's no arguing the fact that LeBron's career has been absolutely insane. But there is one factor. And I've said this 1,000 times. There's one factor that I come into play when it comes to this decision. And it is that stone cold killer mentality. Michael Jordan was a stone cold killer. He did what he had to do to win. End of story. If it needed to be done, he would do it. If he needed to score 50 points, he would do it. Everybody's always going to bring up the fact that he didn't get to where he was. And until he had Pippen around. And the only argument I'm going to say to that, or I guess, come on. How long did it take for LeBron to get there? 4 or 5 years? How long did it take for Jordan to get there? 4 or 5 years? Wow. What shocking resemblance amongst their careers. I had no idea. But, once he got past that youthful stage in his career, and he got Phil Jackson, which is a luxury that LeBron didn't have. He didn't have one of the best coaches of all time, which is something you got to bring into consideration. But once he got Phil Jackson, once that team was built enough to where he can be the star player, but he does have a supporting cast around him, he became the most stone-cold killer in sports history. And I heard, actually, it was a video I heard of Stephen A. recently saying that LeBron is the most respected player of all time. Best small forward, best scorer. He's the world's leading scorer, or NBA's all-time scorer. And he is the most respected player of all time, but Jordan was the most feared. And Jordan, when it came down to it, never gave up. He never gave up on a game. There's a reason why his NBA Finals record is what it is, undefeated, because he never, ever had a moment in that game, even if he was down, where he felt that he could not accomplish his goal in winning this game. And you can't say the same about LeBron. LeBron is, in my opinion, the most gifted athlete of all time. Him and Shaquille O'Neal, him and Shaq. Shaq being the most dominant player, but Shaq didn't have that drive, and so that's why he's not in this conversation. But Michael Jordan brought such an elegance, and he brought such a demanding presence to the game that he really rejuvenated it, and he really brought to life the things that you want to see in a basketball court. You want to see controversy. You want to see big dunks. You want to see these amazing, amazing athletic feats. And there's no denying that Michael Jordan didn't bring all of the above. He brought every part of his game to such an elite level that LeBron just didn't have that mentality to get to that. Now, obviously, come on. In my opinion, so I'm going to say this before I keep going. My opinion, it's Michael Jordan and LeBron, or Michael Jordan and LeBron. I shouldn't have hand gestured that the other way around. But it's Michael Jordan and LeBron, and then it's pretty far down below until you get to number 3, which my 3, 4, and 5 is kind of a carousel of a few players, and mine's not going to agree with everybody else's because I have different things that I value when it comes to evaluating a player. And one of those things is the killer mentality, with alongside the skill, And that's why my carousel below them is kind of a mixture of Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Hakeem Olajuwon I have in that list, Dirk Nowitzki, which Dirk, we'll get into that in a different video. But Michael Jordan brought such an essence to the game of basketball that he and it kind of hasn't been around since basically, prime Kobe left. There really hasn't been that type of play in basketball since, which is, the dominant big centers battling amidst with a super talented, super athletic, small forwards, shooting guard, whatever it is to go along with it, that attacks the paint. In today's league, everything is a spread offense that is just one-on-one matchups, and you see a lot of shooting, And my personal game when I played, I'm not. Don't think I was ever possible. There's a possibility that I was competing with these gentlemen, but my game was high percentage shots. I enjoyed playing in the paint. I was a post guy. I hung out at the free throw line a lot. That was my shot. I was good from shooting the top of the key. And I know just through conversations that I've had with my peers that are my age that lived and grew up in that era of watching basketball that they'll say, and most of them, but a lot of them won't admit to it, but you will, this is the best era of basketball that has been seen. The individual players in the NBA right now are insane. But that era of basketball was so much more entertaining because of all of the inside play that was going on. People left games with bruises. People left games, because they got in fights, because it was physical, because they were in there breaking each other down physically, and whoever was the strongest at the end of the game won that game. And that's why, Shaquille O'Neal was so dominant, the Shaq and Kobe mix. And back to the original topic now with Michael Jordan and LeBron, LeBron was able to do it in both eras. And there's no argument there. Once he got to year 3, he was the best player in the NBA, and he's basically been the same since. He's basically been the best player, and no disrespect to that at all, but he's not a very strong shooter. He's not a very strong free throw shooter. He flat out, when it gets down to it, and especially in the 2011 finals against the Dallas Mavericks, LeBron gave up. He did. LeBron let that 17, 18-point lead, and I understand that Dirk that year was almost like he was possessed, like he sold his soul to the devil to win the championship. But the players that he went through to get to that finals is just that's the most impressive ring of all time. But we'll get to that later at a different video. But LeBron gave up, and in all retrospect, in all seriousness, LeBron is the better player of the two, and that shouldn't have happened. And with the supporting cast that he had around him in Miami, and the supporting cast that Dallas had, and I get they had Tyson Chandler for that year. They had, even their bench players were good too. Like they had an old Mike Bibby on that team. They had, I believe Sean Marion was on that team. Like they had a really good all around team. It wasn't just superstars stacked on top of superstars. They had a really good supporting cast around Dirk Nowitzki. And then Jason Terry, whom is one of the more underrated point guards of all time. But I mean, there's no argument, but come on. Mike Miller came off the bench for freaking the Miami Heat. Like, they were so stacked, it just wasn't even funny. And if LeBron just had that killer mentality to take over and allow his surrounding cast to just play defense and for him to make plays, being the person that he's 6'9", and what was he at the time? 270? Like, I know he lost a little bit of weight after that. But when he was younger, I mean, this is the biggest, fastest human being you've ever seen. And probably may it be the biggest, fastest human being of all time. There may never be somebody that big and fast ever again. And he gave up. That killer mentality lacked. And I'm not even going to go into the whole drama of him, that's just the way the modern day game is played. To me, that shows high basketball IQ. I mean, look at Nikola Jokic, look at Tim Duncan. I mean, Tim Duncan's an old example, but the modern day basketball is played in that fashion, and LeBron just adapted like he has his entire career. But when you break it down to it, who's going to help you win a one-on-one game? Who's going to make sure you win this game? I don't think there's any argument that man is Michael Jordan. And like I said earlier, the elegance, the athleticism, the killer, the fear, the just downright ferocity that he played with has only been come close to by Kobe Bryant. And outside of that, nobody has even come close to matching it. And I don't know of any prospects currently that are, Victor Wembanyama. That's not going to happen. Who's that Minnesota kid? Anthony Edwards, beast, great player. I love his game, love it. Same with Ja Morant, but they just don't have that mentality to go along with it. And all the reasons said are the reasons why, for me, Michael Jordan is the best of all time, and LeBron is number 2. And just for shits and gigs, pardon my language, let's finish the list. I'm going to go Kobe Bryant, number 3. Shaquille O'Neal, number 4. And Magic Johnson, number 5. Larry Bird coming in at close 6. All 3 of those players are very close to each other. And the only reason I pick Shaq is because of his ceiling. Like, I think overall there was a couple centers that were better, but those years that he played, that is what I'm talking about. Those 3 seasons in a row, and if it was one season, I wouldn't have taken it into, but it was about 4 or 5 years where Shaq was by far the most dominant player. And before that, after that's a different story. But that was a player where what can you do? And there's nothing. There's nothing you can do. And so that's why I picked Shaq as in that list, opposed to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or and Hakeem Olajuwon's going to be in my top 10 as well. But anyways, thanks for subscribing and listening, guys. Remember to hit that like button, hit that follow button. There's going to be more to come. We're going to talk about a lot of different things. I got some friends that are going to come in. It's going to be a good time, all right? Hit the comment section. Let me know your feedback. I want to hear what you guys are talking about, and let's discuss. Let's debate. All right. Have a good one, guys. Peace.